We're here this morning with a Toro Timecutter SS5000, taking a look at it because the customer says that it will not start. We'll go through all of the diagnostics and how to repair this issue if you're having one yourself with this Toro branded Loncin engine. Go ahead and first hit that like and subscribe button if you enjoy our content. The first thing we notice as we're looking at this is that the choke knob is completely missing. Nothing on it at all. We're going to replace the choke knob. I am going to move that video to the end, that part of it, because most of you won't need to replace your choke knob. We do need the choke on this just to kind of show you diagnostics. It definitely helps if you're able to choke it to try to start it. Before we try to start this, the first thing you'll want to check is the oil. You want to check, make sure it's got the right amount of oil in it, and make sure that the oil is not smelling like gas. If it's smelling like gas, you have an issue with the carburetor draining fuel into the crankcase. This one does not smell like gas. It is good. If your carburetor has failed and is draining fuel in the crankcase, you'll either need to clean and rebuild it, or you will need to replace it. Either way. With this, the first thing we like to look at is the fuel. The fuel quality would be a major indicator of why something won't start if it's bad fuel. You can take the line off here and confirm that it is getting fuel while it's turning over. Fuel line off. Put a jump pack on this thing so we can get it fired up, or at least tested. I'm just checking to make sure fuel is getting to the carburetor since we have tried to turn it over. Shooting out of there good. That stuff looks very, very yellow to me. And yeah, I can smell it. It smells pretty bad. If your fuel is bad, many times your mower will not start at all. It's not flammable enough to run. That happens all the time in different instances. We're gonna check and see if that's the case here shortly. Maybe I'll leave that battery jump box on there for a minute. Let's choke it and see what happens. Absolutely nothing. If your mower's still not starting, you know it's getting fuel. Our choke's definitely working, as we've confirmed. We can try some starting fluid or some fuel down in the intake. We just take the air filter out after you take the cover off. And spray a little bit down in either hole here. Filter's seen a few better days, but not completely packed. If it starts on this auxiliary fuel source, we know the problem is either A, the fuel quality, or B, the carburetor's all gummed up. It could also be a combination of both. If you're not getting fuel flow here to begin with, you know either the fuel pump's bad, it's not getting crankcase vacuum to here. This is the fuel pump that the other guy already replaced, it looks like. And the fuel filter, we know it's good because we're getting flow. Let's try it with that carb cleaner. So it burned off the carb cleaner and then it died on me. If you notice, it ran just for a little while, halfway decent. If it's running like that and it's running poorly, you heard kind of those pops that went on. If those are happening, that's a solid indicator of a dirty carb or bad gas again. If you're getting all these things and it won't start on an auxiliary fuel source, you'll want to pull the spark plugs and make sure that you're getting spark. All you have to do is pull the wire off. You can either put a different spark plug in here, or you can pull the one out that you have. We use a spark checker to check it if that's the case. It just clips onto the wire on the outside. They work great. But we can hold it against here. I usually use a rag or something to insulate myself, but you can hold it against here and turn it over. And if you see spark in between the middle and the outside probe, you know that it's good. It should be like a blue spark. It's, as long as you're getting spark there 9 times out of 10, it should fire as long as you have a fuel source. at least get something out of it. If you're getting spark and you're getting fuel and it's still not firing at all, you've got an issue with the valves or with something else going on in the engine. You can pull the valve covers, the 4 bolts here, and take a look at the valve train. That would be the next step. Here we know that we have a fuel related or carburetor related issue. We're going to get down to the carburetor, we're gonna inspect it, see if it can be cleaned. If not, we'll replace it. The fuel we will also drain right now. We're gonna drain all this fuel out because it smells bad and it's likely very tainted. It's probably got water or something in it. We'll see once we get the carb completely off, but oh, it smells horrible. Wow. I'll get that drain set up real quick and then we'll start taking the top off. We're gonna drain the fuel just using a regular old electric fuel pump. We just hook it up to the battery. Should have enough juice hopefully to do this even without the charger on it right now. And we're gonna take it off before the fuel pump. You cannot gravity drain this because there's an elbow that comes from the top and it sucks the fuel up through. You could try to siphon it or something like that, but this is the easiest way in my mind anyway. We're just gonna go down into our container. We've got all kinds of room and hoses on here. Okay, while that's pumping, we're going to remove this cover to get to the carburetor. If yours is running poorly and you can't figure out why, you've checked the spark, you've got spark on both sides, you can also pull each spark plug wire independently. You can pull this side, ground this out just with a spark plug or by touching something metal, and run it on the opposite side. The opposite side, if one runs independently of the other and the other one does not, so if we pull this one and this side runs fine, but we plug this back in and remove this spark plug and this side won't run, we know we have an issue with something on this cylinder, either something with the valves or something with the spark. Something is allowing that not to run correctly or grounding it out. That's for loss of power issues. Loss of power can be caused from the carburetor, it can be caused from the fuel. It can also be caused, we see a lot if you're running it for 20 minutes or so, and then it dies out, anywhere from really 10 to 50 minutes sometimes. It'll still be a fuel supply issue. They'll, at the corner elbow coming up out of the tank, there's a tube that comes straight up and turns to a 90. We get stuff stuck in those 90-degree elbows all the time. And it'll cause that issue. It'll eventually shut off fuel supply, but once you let it sit for a while, it'll be fine. It's still pumping fuel, just not as fast as it should. You can check that if you're having one of those issues, or it's an intermittent issue you can't figure out. Here, it's not intermittent. It won't start, won't stay running the entire time. Let's take a look at that carb. The cover just has 10mm bolts holding it on, all the way around. And these are all exactly the same. So you've got 6 of them. Once those come off and you have your air cleaner out, the whole thing just pulls up and away. Now we're to the carburetor. To take the carburetor off, we've got a couple tubes. You got that one, and then you got a breather tube for the crankcase. Sometimes if you just grab them and twist before you pull, come off easier. Same thing with fuel line when we get to it. And then you've got a clip for the choke. The clip just pushes this way, and then the linkage comes straight out. I'm gonna just let that hang right there. On this side, we've got linkage going to the throttle. We're going to just push it. You push it towards the back, that little clip comes off, and then you can pull it straight off. If you don't have any tension on it, If you take the throttle down to low, it won't spring back like that. It'll be a little bit easier for us to put back in. You can either take that off or you can leave it hang. If you take it off, you just pull it towards you and take the Z-bend out, and it'll go right back in just that same way. Now that the carburetor is loose, I'm going to take this front cover off. There is still a fuel line, but I'll show you how to do that when we get a little closer to it. So these are just 10mm nuts. There's 4 of them that hold the front on. And we can pull that. That just pulls straight out after that. There is a gasket here. That's important, otherwise it'll suck this stuff down into it after you put it back together. You can see all the dust and dirt that's been all over this thing, but there's none. A little bit of black. Almost smells like starting fluid, I believe. Whoever was trying to work on it before. We've got our fuel line. Take it off. Going to pull the clamp off. I'm going to take it and twist, and then pull it straight off. I'm going to let that little bit just drain out. We don't want that in there. We want fresh fuel to start with when we get to that point. So all the linkages are removed and everything else is removed from this. Now we can just take and pull it straight out. Once it's out like that, on the back side, you'll notice that the solenoid's still holding it on. Forgot all about the solenoid. It comes up top here, right to this location. So if you take and you cut the strap holding it on, you can unplug it from here. We'll put a strap back on that. But now it'll pull straight out, not before. Carburetor is completely free and out. Let's open it up. We come down here, there's 4 bolts on the bottom that hold this bowl on. I always like to take a pair of pliers and break them free before I try to loosen them. Otherwise, it seems like you just strip them out a lot of times. Once they're broken free, real easy to just get out with a screwdriver. Got yellow gas flowing out of it everywhere. Yeah, so there is water all down in the bottom here. You can see that. So that fuel is very bad. I'm glad we're draining it. It don't smell good. Very bad against my hands. If we're going to clean this carburetor, we'll want to check the inlet. Make sure that there's nothing here that could be sticking our float up or anything like that. And then we'll also want to clean the main jet. You can see there's just a piece of, I don't know, something there, gum or varnish. We can take those out and clean them. You want to use a screwdriver that fits down in there real well so you don't strip the brass. There's one of these jets for each cylinder since it's a double body throttle. That's the main jet. If this is clogged down through there, you will not get any fuel to your mower. If there's any restriction, it will not run good. After that, you've got 2 emulsion tubes. They go back up in there with this part facing away from you, or I'm sorry, towards you or down if the carburetor's upright. All these holes need to be cleaned down through there. If they're not, you're still gonna have issues. Next, we've got our pilot jets up top. If you're getting bad surging out of your mower, you want to make sure these are clean. Pop them straight out. Down through there, you should be able to poke a little piece of a wire brush through there, and you should be able to see it in this hole down at the bottom. If those are clogged, again, it will not run right. They need to be completely clean in order for this to operate properly. The solenoid, you can take it out and you can test it while it's plugged in. If it's plugged in, you should get a good clicking out of it and you should get some action out of it. So there's a spring. Down in here, if it gets dirty, this will get held up and it won't operate properly. If that's held about right here and you plug it in, it'll suck back down in. That's what it should do if you plug this in while it's off the machine and the ignition's on. As soon as the ignition comes on, it should suck back down in. And all that's doing is keeping fuel from going through the little hole to get to the main jets. It shuts off all fuel. Testing the solenoid once it's off is very easy. You can plug it in, and then all you have to do is look. You can look at the probe, and when you turn the ignition switch to on, you should be getting that probe to move. That little needle should jump back this way to allow fuel through. It is not doing that. It is doing nothing. On, off, on, off, on, off. As long as that battery is charged and we're getting voltage to here, there's no reason that shouldn't be working. We get nothing. The solenoid is bad on this unit. The solenoid will need replaced along with the rebuild. Now this carburetor is aftermarket, but it is made by Huayi, H-U-A-Y-I, which is, if we look at the old one, the OEM supplier. So this is the same carburetor as that. Look a little bit different for some reason, but exactly the same brand, same everything. Yeah, there's a little bit difference up top. I'm not sure why that is, but this is the OEM supplier. I'm not sure if they made a change at some point or what. The only thing we will need to switch over on this is the part for the choke. You'll have to push this through this little tab, pinch the backside, pull it through. And we're going to put that on the other side of the choke. We want it to be in the first hole up top. That'll allow us to clip that choke on. The other side comes with the piece for the throttle. You'll normally want to set that right about the same as the other one is. We will want to make sure, so if you cleaned your carburetor, great, everything's good, that's perfect, we can put it back on. If your seal has been broken at the backside, you will replace that intake gasket there and on the front. You want to make sure, no matter what, that you have good gaskets going towards the carburetor. We have Briggs & Stratton ones like this sitting around. This is what I'm going to use. It's exactly the same size and everything. No difference there. The reason I didn't replace this back one is because it was perfect. There was no rips or anything out of it. It probably could have been reused, but putting an extra one there reseals any of those voids. That second one there, the only difference in this is that it has a hole here. It doesn't matter whatsoever. It seals around these notches to the outside of the carburetor. Take this off here. We can test this solenoid by plugging it in. So if we plug that in and we have battery power, which we do now, we can turn it on, and you should hear it click as you turn it on and off. That means that the solenoid's working. It's the same as if you're testing the solenoid either before or after you pulled it off. This will go just right back on how the other one did. We'll route this wire up underneath and come through to the backside while we do it in order to hook that up. And then you'll also want to make sure that the gasket on the front side is a new good gasket. Again, that other one wasn't ripped or anything, but I want to reseal it with a new one. I think we got it. Sure is an awful weird gasket for this, to be quite honest with you. I'm not sure I've ever seen one wrap around that tube or anything like that. Kind of weird. Anyway, that'll reseal it once we put that front back on. And again, this one is not broken at all. If it was, you'll want to scrape all that gasket material off wherever it is actually broken or bad at. We'll clean all this up real quick, put these linkages back on. We'll power wash this whole engine and everything once we're done, clean it up a little bit better, but get as much as you can off the bottom in places where you're not going to be able to power wash. All right, so this, I think I'm going to put these linkages back on just while we have a pretty good view of it. This goes straight in down at the bottom, just down into that hole for your throttle. Again, if you turn your throttle all the way down, it allows you to move it easier and line it up over here. That just goes straight in to the side. So I'm just going to take it out, but yeah, it just pushes straight into the hole, and then the clip comes down and clips on the back side. Same thing over here with this linkage. It's going to go in to the hole, and then the linkage is going to come down, or the clip's going to come down and clip onto it. Now we can test it all. If we move this, you should see your throttle nice and sprung. If we move this, our choke's all the way choked. Now our choke's all the way open. Choked, open. That all works perfectly. Since we've got the fuel all drained and everything out of it, we'll put that back on. I do like to snip this back just a hair. Just going to cut just a, you know, maybe 3/8 of an inch off, just enough so it's sealing in a different spot than the other carburetor. If there's any cracks or anything like that around there, you'll want to replace that fuel line at the same time. Perfect. Put our clip back on. And again, the reason for replacing this is that this carburetor is no more than what a rebuild is going to be. A rebuild is going to be almost exactly the same price. That back on, and then we've got our 4 nuts that go on. You want to make sure this is tight enough that you don't have an air leak between that back piece and the carburetor, but you also don't want to over tighten it. You can break that piece doing this also. If you over tighten it, it'll break that plastic insulator between there. Then you'll have a major air leak. Your unit will rev up real high and you'll be wondering what happened. Got this back on the back side. It just pushes back on. And then the clip goes right back over it. We've got our EPA tube right there. Go back on. Get a zip tie real quick. Just keep that wire back out of the way. Right where it was before. And this is just to keep it from hitting the flywheel. I'd like to maybe come right on that plastic. There we go. That should be good. Out of the way. And snip that additional. Now we're going to replace the fuel filter. Always like to do that anytime we're dealing with the fuel system at all. Again, cut it back a little bit just to get you a nice good spot to seal to. Drop that little piece of rubber right down in here. Wondering where that clip went, but there it is. Again, if you twist and turn, it makes it a lot easier to pull off to begin with. Reinstall that. Clip just a bit. Everything is all hooked up. We could go ahead and test run it right now without the top on. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and put it back on. I'm sure it's going to be perfect. It doesn't want to go quite down far enough. I think I'm hitting something. There it goes. I don't know exactly what I was hitting, but I was hitting on something. Still seems like that doesn't quite want to go all the way down where it should be. It's actually that I'm hitting on the piece that I decided I was going to put up high like that. It appears that it actually has to go down a little further underneath to keep it out of the way. It's actually hitting on that connector. Yep, there we go. Getting some good rain around here. It's been really warm. Nice busy season for sure. Night and day versus last year. Last year it was extremely dry around here. Didn't have a very good mowing season at all. I'm gonna put a new filter in here. Okay, everything is set up. Get that last one. Throw some fuel in it. We use ethanol free. It's a 91 octane that we get, and we treat it with Phaser 3000, which is 2-butoxyl ethanol, and that basically reduces the surface tension between water and gas to mix moisture back in case your ethanol or in case your fuel gathers moisture at all. Sometimes the ethanol will separate out. If we add this to anything, you know, fuel's amphibious, so it's definitely going to gather water if there's water to be gathered. Throw a good amount of this in there. Choke it. Get some more battery again. Don't think my jump pack's liking it now. This one was a quick, easy, you know, repair that was something that wasn't anything out of the ordinary, something that we see all the time on something like this. It's why we keep these carburetors here. You know, name brand carburetors, if it can be bought as aftermarket as the original brand, that's perfect. That's exactly what you want. You're gonna save, it's gonna be a quarter of the price of what the OEM Toro one's gonna be. I'll put part numbers to all this and descriptions of the engine and the model numbers of everything down below. Please hit that like and subscribe button if this helped you out and if you enjoy the content. Thanks for watching. Excuse the noise from the battery charger. Got to get it charged up. It looks like they left the key on when they were trying to start it. We're going to remove the 3 Phillips head screws from the top of the operator station. And it's just a Phillips head 2. There's 3 of those. And then the whole station comes right off. Next we can take the nut and the washer off the backside. Looks like a 5/8. Nope, it's a 9/16. And you just unscrew. I like to hold the old cable in place. And that's just a lock nut. Or I'm sorry, a nut and a lock washer. We're gonna hang on to those as we pull this out. The whole cable goes out. As you pull it out, pay attention to where the routing goes. It goes right down in here under the bar and to the back. It's not very complicated on this one, but if you go the wrong way, you'll end up with issues. This one's pretty burnt up at some point. Almost hit that positive of the battery cable. That wouldn't have been good. All right. Come through with the other one. And as you're going through, you'll put the lock nut, or I'm sorry, lock washer, and then the nut on here. And route it down the same way that it came from. Again, it just goes kind of through this hole, and then there's a spot underneath the frame, and it goes straight to the back. It goes right along with the other one, with the throttle cable. Push that all the way in. And once it's in here, we're gonna want it facing this way so it routes underneath and goes through this notch out. So just like such. And you can mark exactly where the old one went. It doesn't really matter as long as it's able to make that curve and go through the notch down below. As you put it on here, it should fit easily. If there's any tension on this, that means you have it too far this way and it's trying to hit somewhere else. That's all you need to do is tighten that down and you're good to go. You can put these 3 back in. As we can see, we have it all routed just up under the frame rail here. Now we're going to put that Z in that same hole we took that other one out of. Just put it in there and pull it back. And with the choke off, we're going to want to be fully in the off position, so fully that way. I'm going to sit it on the bottom just like this other one was, and the little notch is going to go in the hole at the top to lock it into place. Just like such. And again, fully that way with the choke pushed all the way in. And then we'll tighten this down. Now when we pull the choke comes all the way closed. That is fully activating. If it's not activating quite enough, you've got it not set right. If this can go up any further, it's not set right. I wanted to get just a little bit closer view of the linkage going to the choke, to the carburetor. So as this moves, this should come all the way up and down. So if it can go any further that way, then it's not set right. That's off choke, that's completely back up. That's completely too off choke. If you don't have it set to these ways, it will not run right, or you'll get poor running, or it'll be choking itself out the whole time you're using it.